InterCommunity events. Special thanks to Fergus McKay and Portia Rabonda for making this happen. And now I will take you through some of our housekeeping rules. Like I say, we do have simultaneous interpretation available in French and Spanish, as well as closed captions available in English. And this is sponsored by Flex Optics. You can select either option in your Zoom panel. Make sure you keep your microphone on mute at all times, unless you're asking a question. And I see some of you are already using the raise hand feature, so you can use that, and then you'll be admitted to ask a question. Please use the chat for all questions, and remember to keep your questions short and straight to the point. And kindly format your questions with your first name and country. If you want to type your question in French or Spanish, you can do that. We'll have your questions translated and sent to the moderator. And last but definitely not least, we are recording this session and we'll make it available for you at the end of this call. And now I'll hand you over to Jane Coffin, who's our Senior Vice President for Internet Growth, to set us off. Jane, please.
Thank you, Evelyn, and thank you very much for that proverb. It's really important to recognize the importance of going together, walking together down paths. And this is all about our community, all about all of you, our partners like Flex Optics and others who help us with our virtual peering forums as well, but really about all the work that you've been doing. You have a wonderful lineup today of speakers who are part of our community from around the world, but these are also people who are community and partnership builders. We often say at the Internet Society on our infrastructure and community development projects and our Internet Grow project portfolio, you can't have single points of failure with partners, so you grow a strong partnership base. That means the more partners, the better. So thank you very much for everything everyone's doing, and a huge shout out to Machuki Mwangi and Naveed Haq, who are the leads for the Infrastructure and Community Development Project. The name of that project in and of itself is very much representative of the important work on building and growing infrastructure and building and growing communities to sustain that infrastructure. We're going to hear more about internet exchange points and some development of IXPs from really key people in our community. So I'm going to turn it over now to another community member and partner, Hisham Ibrahim, who currently is with RIPE NCC. Hisham has been a brother to Machuki and building IXPs around the planet, particularly in Sub-Saharan, but also in the Middle East and elsewhere. So Hisham, who's a great partner from a regional internet registry, over to Hisham.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Jane, for the nice introduction, the kind words. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I've been, it just turned 200. I've been looking at the participants, and it was just kind of like hanging towards 200. I think somebody kind of dropped off, but they're going to come in. But I'm very happy with the turnout, and hopefully we get more people in as the session progresses. My name, as you may have heard, is Hisham Ibrahim. I am the Community Engagement and Development Manager at the RIPE NCC. Well, what that actually means is I go out and I talk to a lot of people about doing cool, interesting things on the internet, which is a big passion of myself, a lot of people on this call, if not everybody. And I think that's a passion that we all share, which is why we are here today to discuss a little bit more. But you're not here to hear about me, you're here to hear about the lovely things that the others have been doing in their communities. So without further ado, I will ask the first speaker to talk a little bit about exchange points and what role they do in building communities around infrastructure and the value that it actually brings there, not just from the technical side, but also from the human side, the community side of things. So without any further ado, Anton, if I can ask you to please tell us a little bit of the challenges that you faced into actually developing an exchange point. So, please.
Okay, thanks, Hisham, for the brilliant prelude to the discussion which you are going to have here. And thank you, Internet Society, for organizing this particular event. It is more about sharing of the experience, and that what makes it more wonderful rather than some theoretical side. So in the next few minutes, I'll take you through that my engagement of being part of something which is getting created in the form of an internet exchange point. What were the challenges? What were the peak? Where we got a lot of satisfaction, and how we are currently where we are and where we want to go. So it has been a very long journey. Can we move to the next slide? So it is important that you understand from where I belong. So I am part of Calcutta. It is the capital city of the state of West Bengal in India. It is very close to Bay of Bengal, which is around 200 kilometers from the seashore. And very recently, a cable landing station has been approved in a place called Digha, which is around 180 kilometers from where we are. And that is going to change the work and amplify the work which is happening at the internet exchange point and the community which we are here. And this community has played a very strong role in popularizing this concept of a cable landing station. So that is one of our topmost achievement, if you say that what we have been able to change on the ground without doing much is talk about what is required for the community, and that has taken its shapes over a period of 4 or 5 years. Now, when we started the internet exchange point, it was basically we were trying to implement a root server instance in Kolkata. And when we approached one of the root server instance operator, they said that we give instances, but you need to create an IX framework because our root server instance works under an IX fabric. And that's from where it started. We looked out for the internet exchange points in India at that point of time. There was one national internet exchange of India, which is called Nixie. They had a lot of points, around 10 pops. Some of them were having traffic, some of them were not having traffic, but there was no one to talk to, the people who were appearing in those exchanges. So that was the first challenge. We were starting to work in a community program where there was no community existing at that point of time, and that was something in 2014-15 time frame. So an exchange which has got presence all across India, some of which are working, some of which are working very brilliantly, and some of which are not working, but there is no community there. So the first challenge was how do we talk to the people who are there, who are working on the network. So when we finally were able to manage and move ahead on this one, when we talked with them, we found that some of them are saying that yes, we are into the IX because Nixie is a government organization and we wanted to be there. Some of them said that it is much easier to exchange traffic at Singapore or Marseilles, but rather than exchange traffic in Delhi or in Calcutta. So we go out and do it. So everybody was having their own sense. And from the technical and the academic community which we were thinking that exchange is the right thing to do, peering saves money. But for the people for whom we were trying to work upon, the business, the people in the ISP business who were taking internet down to the level, for them, IX was not making much sense. So that is again one learning which we got was that whatever program you design from a civil society or an academic perspective, the right stakeholder needs to be part of your community. Okay, so now with some of these people on board, we started moving forward in 2014-15. I have the journey in the next slide. Can we move to the next slide, please? So it all started in 2014. By 2016, we had a small community build up because of the Indian ITF capacity building program, which was funded by Beyond the Net as well as the Government of India, which allowed to have these discussions on internet exchange point. And then the first CDN in the form of Akamai agreed to be there. And in 2017, we were somehow managing it here and there. And then we finally got our first ISP into the exchange, who agreed to give the backfill traffic or the upstream required for Akamai. Now, we required an organizational home. So in 2018, we created India Internet Foundation as the organizational home for this IX, which was known at that point of time as iPhone IX. Now, a lot of things changed in 2019 when we hosted Sanok 34. And that was the real time when this business community with whom we were wanting at the onset, they were actually there on the ground and they saw that what was happening. And then that's the time when it started growing really. Now we were not short of people, not short of community. We were having people who were willing to work with us. And the first decision which the working group which was managing this IX took was to rename it as the Kolkata IX. So 2019 it got renamed into Kolkata IX. And then because of the growth, we were operating in 2014 with a microtech switch which has got one SFP port and 10 or 12 Ethernet ports. From there, now we were having a situation where we wanted more ports and all of them as 1 gig or 10 gig ports. So we reached out to ISA. Jane and Naveed kindly consented to give us one very good switch, which is now installed in this IX, and that allows us to grow further. Now we are not short of, we are giving everyone a 10 gig port. Okay, whether you want the 1 gig or not, it is up to you, but the capacity is for a 10 gig. So growth is not a bottleneck now. Now that has allowed us to move into 2021, where we are now approaching more CDNs to come and join us. In the meantime, we have become Manras compliant. And then the working group or the group which is managing this IX has taken a decision to create some mini or rural IX. So we want to experiment by setting up a very small IX in some distance, 200-300 kilometers from the city of Calcutta, because as a country, India was forced into digital transformation in the last 1.5 years of pandemic. While we were shouting at the top of our voice that we are digital India, but the real digital transformation has taken in the last 1.5 years, and that has changed the requirement of an IX at the level of a city like Kolkata to further go down into some level 2 or level 3 cities and see what is happening. So that is what the group has decided to do. Now, if we move to the next slide, you will see that who are we talking about here. So on the right hand side, you will see the people who are part of this working group. On the left hand side are the people who have helped us build this thing. Internet Society has given us a switch. We are using IXP Manager for managing the entire infrastructure. Basic Technologies has given us the space to host that infrastructure of IX. Kolkata chapter is doing all the community reach out. Then Alliance Broadband is giving us the upstream required for filling up the CDNs, and SpeedNet is also doing the same for one of the CDNs. So this group of people have come together to work on one thing, which is an IX and Kolkata IX. Now, if we move to the next slide, you will see that why are these people together now? And this is one of the core of what we have been able to do till now. So we have managed the challenge of till now of creating a community coming together to do something which is positive for them. Now, what was required was to give the empowerment to this community. So as a group, what is going to be the port charges? That is decided by this working group. Will we charge a little more for the future? That is also decided by this working group. Okay. What is going to be the new initiative? This is decided by this working group. What is going to be the policy for the IX? That is decided by this working group. So the group has to be empowered to take decisions, and that is what we have been able to inculcate in this working group. Now, if we look at the value, in last 1 year of operations, roughly $500,000 has been saved by the people who have appeared here in terms of the bandwidth which they have exchanged and the content which they were able to get out of this exchange. This is not a very small amount of money, but it is roughly 60% of the savings in the cost for the traffic which they have exchanged, which otherwise would have gone to Mumbai or Delhi or somewhere. Okay. Now, that is something which is not making the real impact of internet exchange point. The internet exchange point is making an impact in two dimensions. One is where it is making the internet more resilient. And how it is making it more resilient? It is not by because we have given up ISOC has given a switch, we have created an IX. What this IX has been able to do is that the savings for the operators, they are investing that back into upgrading their hardwares. And that is the message which we run from this working group, that whatever money which you are saving by exchanging traffic, don't take it as part of your profit. Okay. Invest a part of it back into the hardware which is required to upgrade your own network. Okay. Then this IX goes back and trains their people. If you look at how internet is shut down, whenever a shutdown is ordered, it is not that somebody is logging out, making a BGP policy change and all. That doesn't happen. How an internet shutdown happens here. When an internet shutdown is ordered, the guy simply goes out of their network operations command, knock, and cut the wire. And whenever they are ordered back to go online, they simply do the splicing and join it back. That's how it works. Because they don't have the people who can log out of the server, then log in, redo all the BGP policies and all. So everything runs as if everything is being worked upon, is running. Only the main wire gets cut and then it gets joined again. And that's the only thing which this small operator 300 kilometers from Calcutta can actually do. So because he does rest of the things on a consultancy basis. So we are giving trained manpower. The issues are getting faster resolved. And that is what is creating the resilience, because resilience is nothing but the ability of someone to come back in case of an adversity. So whenever something adverse is happening, this group together is allowing themselves to come back online much faster. And that is what resiliency, I feel, is all about. Now, Manras, if you take Manras, this security dimension was something which will only be done when it has started impacting. Proactively trying to do something on security, that is a mindset change, which has actually happened because of the people coming in this IX. So we can't say that we have impacted the entire state of West Bengal, but at least 8 or 10 ISPs who are part of this community. These are the people who are now of the mind frame that yes, Manras is something which is beneficial for us, and it allows us to give the people a much more reliable internet connectivity, and that's what they are selling about. If we move to the next slide. So summing up my experience till now, that the resilience of internet in a particular region is directly proportional to the number of IX in that particular region. This is an empirical relationship which we have observed because in Calcutta itself, multiple IX have come up, and the more number of IXs are coming up, the internet reliability is increasing in the region. And when we looked at other places as well, we found a similar relationship. The second impact is in terms of social impact, where the ISPs who are part of this community start trusting each other. They are now devising ways to bring some synergies in their purchasing processes, some synergies in their processes for doing the call center and managing their customers. So a lot of trust alongside competition is something which we are seeing as a social impact. Otherwise, the members were so competitive with each other that they did not like to see their face even, and now at least they know there is a place where they can go back and start talking with each other. So with these two broad-based impacts, it gives us the impetus to carry on what we have been doing till now, and then expand the entire idea of creating an internet exchange point, because it impacts not only the users but the community as a whole, how internet is being delivered to the people and how internet can change the life of the people. So with this, I will stop here and then we'll look forward to the comments. And thanks once again, Naveed and Jane, for supporting our initiative from last 5-7 years, our effort over last few years. So namaste, and looking forward to your questions.
Yep. Thank you so much for that, Anpam. While you were talking, I was going through the chats and seeing like people saying which country they're from, and I'm very happy to see all the continents represented and from all over. I also know that there are more people that are trying to join, and I know they're trying to work on this. But while we are here, being the lucky 200 that actually are on this call. I wanted to pick your brain a little bit here, and if any have questions, please either use the raise hand function or put your question in chat. But you mentioned a couple of things that I wanted you to elaborate on a little bit. You said a few words that I wrote down, like empowering them to make decisions, right? When it came to the community actually figuring out what kind of policies that they wanted to do. And I think that's an important thing, if you can speak to that a little bit, and what that actually meant for the community. Because as you also pointed out, and we hear this in many countries that exchanges are beginning to pop up in, it's easier, it's simpler, it's even sometimes cost effective to send your traffic to Marseille or to Europe and back, in many cases, right? But then coming together as a community and going, this is something that is good for us on the long run. And to use your word again, empowering them to make these kind of calls. Can you elaborate a little bit more on this? Because I think it's important in this context.
Absolutely. So you will have to see the context. Why was empowering important? Before we created a working group which was trying to create the policy and trying to fix up the port charges and all. There was a setup in the country where you are a customer of an IX. Okay, so you don't do anything. You just put a request that I want to peer, and then in turn they come back and say that whether you are allowed to be peered or not. Okay, and the end of the month there is an invoice which comes out, for which you need to do the payment. If there is an issue, you don't have a voice. How should the exchange move forward? You don't have a voice. Okay, now when you suddenly bring these people and try to do it as a part of community, it was very difficult for us to make them say that yes, the things which you want can be done. Okay, so we were initially thought like another IX which is competing with an existing IX, and that is how it is a customer supplier relationship rather than a community relationship. So when the empowerment was all about bringing them together and the ability to take certain decisions, and we as a organization was just executing those decisions which was taking place in the group. So it was making them believe that they are the owners of this IX rather than the organizational home of an IX being the owner of this entire initiative. So that was a transformation in terms of how things were being perceived at.
Thank you for that. And I do see a couple questions on costs, and I'll go to them in a second. But I also wanted to talk about, so after the exchange was built, and in terms of the social aspect of it, we usually see like events being built around it, whether being NOGs, whether being peering forums, whether being just gatherings where people just come together and exchange that. We see even in a virtual world where, events like the Africa Peering Forum, we still continue to do them online, but we still are doing like socials online and trying to figure out new ways of doing so. How are you dealing with that, again, in the COVID context, but also in general? How do you see that socializing for the community?
So 2019, we did something called as India Internet Week, where we had a session on the technical side of the things, where we were handholding the people to bring them onto the same level in terms of how to peer and what is the value of peering and all, which is one of the objectives. Last year we did again some kind of tutorial. So we have not designed anything like peering forum or something. And we do have an InNog where, which is India Nog, where the members are being encouraged to participate because there is a community which is getting formed there. We are sticking to the idea of creating manpower who can actually work on the ground. Okay, training the people so that there is a much larger workforce to work upon rather than just take the policy decision. So it is a conscious choice as of now to work on the manpower side of the things rather than trying to be at or create a peering forum or something.
No, brilliant. And I see some comments for you that people are saying, thank you for the great talk and how you're guiding people with what you're saying here. But I'll throw this to the cost question and maybe to you, but also for ISOC, because you kind of mentioned that ISOC helped out as well. There was a question about how did you calculate the savings? So there was that, but there's also a couple of questions about, the cost of starting up and figuring out how to get an exchange point up and running. And just to attach the ISOC question here, there was a question that was shared that also said something about what kind of support for rural and developing areas can people expect or find in terms of supporting such initiatives. So maybe we start with you, and then maybe ISOC after that, if somebody wants to address that.
Okay. So in terms of calculation for the savings, that is something which was again given to the members to ask them to see that had they not peered at Calcutta Internet Exchange, what would the cost would they have incurred, and how much saving they have said that they feel that they have done. So that is, we have taken the figure from each one of our members and then just aggregated it to see that whether it matches with the traffic which has gone through the IX or not. So this is a figure from the people aggregated, cross-checked to see that whether it makes sense or not. So that's how we have come at the figure of the savings. In terms of cost, my inspiration was a blog somewhere on the online that how to start an IX with $1,000. So I still believe that it can be done within $1,000, but that never includes the effort of the people around it to actually get it done. So the investment of the time, investment of the manpower resources, people trying to be at different conferences and other places to actually talk to those people, those are something which is most more cost bearing rather than the cost of the IX itself. So it is a little different perspective that while it technically $1,000 is good enough to start an IX, but it will take much more investment to actually bring it online.
That's a very good point. And there's a good talk of a friend of mine, Remco van Moot, that actually did a talk about how to build an exchange for roughly $1,000, and it's online. And so I encourage people to look at that. I think we'll move to the next talk and then maybe take some of the questions afterwards. I know I asked a question for ISOC on what kind of support, and I do think it's an important one, but maybe tying that also to the concept of NOGs would be an interesting one. So moving to our next speaker, a good friend of mine, Hiba, to talk to us of an initiative that I think is really interesting to be talking about, SDNOG. And if we're talking about communities, I don't think there's a finer example that I can think of off the top of my mind of what the Sudanese community went through in building the NOG and the efforts that they are continuously doing and putting to shame other countries that have not followed their in suit in terms of how engaged they've managed to get the community and how they've really turned around things in their country. So Hiba, without any further ado, please.
Thank you very much, Hisham, for the nice words. This is really fantastic. I'm Hiba Tijani. I'm a network engineer. I'm part of Sudan Network Operators Group Executive Committee. And I'm here to talk to you about SDNOG, or Sudan Network Operators Group. So SDNOG was founded in 2014. At the time, it's a community-oriented organization, non-for-profit organization based in Sudan. And at the time in 2014, it was the second NOG in MENA region and the third in Africa. During the foundation of SDNOG, people might ask why did we wanted to start something like that. So if we go to the next slide, we can see that basically, the people who started, or the founding members of SDNOC, started because they were fortunate enough to have the opportunity to participate in some of the regional events, like the Africa Internet Summit, AFRINIC meetings, AFNOG meetings, and they have seen the value such interactions and collaboration between people within such platform and settings is bringing. And they thought, what will happen if we decided to replicate something like that in Sudan? The idea was that we had very different situation in Sudan. So there was no like industry or ISB association. So if you are working in one of the internet service provider and you wanted to have a say in one of the national priorities, like building an IXP or how to run an IXP or pushing for anything, you will not have a voice, basically, to voice out your initiatives or your interests. Also, if you are like a fresh graduate, you will have a hard time to find out where to start or where to find opportunities to do some networking and interconnection to land a new job or something like that. Also, if you want, like, let's say you want to start some project or initiative, where you will find people who will think the same like you. So the idea was to create a platform or network where people who are interested in network operation and internet in general could come together and discuss the issues, the initiative, how to go around the priorities, how to share their experience. At the time, Sudan was under sanction, basically economic sanction, and many of the things that is like given in other parts of the world was not available in Sudan. So people had to do a lot of like work around in order to make networks and things work. And this was like a unique experience that you will not find anywhere else. And it made sense that people who went through those experience transfer this knowledge to others so that we don't repeat the project or the experience every time. So it started, if we go to the next slide, we can see that it started with getting together people who thought or were enthusiastic about the idea. And we try to reach to people from all of the main actors in the network operation domain or industry at the time. And we try to start with basically bringing people together and just voice out the idea and try to see how they react to it and how they could contribute to it. So we had like some technical events. We had to have like a long planning to launch the group. And we tried to do it as much as in-person event in order to get the interaction and to get the feeling of what people are thinking. And then we try to make sure that there is something online that like mailing lists, like platforms, like wiki servers, so that people could go the further step and continue the interaction even when they are not in person. One of the key things that was like a cornerstone for our success was the stakeholder support. So although it took some time to reach out to many of them and to convince them with the idea, they've been like the main supporter for us, whether they are in Sudan or outside Sudan. So the government, the telecom regulator, the industry partners, people from outside Sudan, the Internet Society, AFRINIC, the people in PCH, INC, different actors within the Internet Society was trying, and the internet domain, they're trying to push for the community to build up. And that's all resulted in success in 2014. So if we can see what was the result in the next slide for this effort, I can name that during the years since 2014, we have a steady growing in our community base. We had seen some people who met and did some technical events and did the basic networking, went out and did some startups, because they worked together and they had more sense of how the other person think, or whether they have mutual interest or not. We have some people who found different job opportunities within our event. So we try to do like a regular event, maybe monthly, weekly workshops, and then we have like a big event where we try to get people from outside Sudan and from within Sudan, so that the knowledge is transferred, and maybe people are trained by experts, and then they could spread the knowledge. One of the other main things that is also was visible, that we had some sort of stakeholder recognition. So in terms of Sudan internally, the government and the regulator was looking into SDNOC as the organization to go if they want to consult about things related to network operation, if they want to have the view of the stakeholders, the view of the community perspective from that event. So we participated in some of the internet governance event, people from outside Sudan. So one of the things that we noticed before is that in many benchmarks, in many studies, the situation in Sudan was not considered because there was no contact, and it was like always no information. So having an organization that represents the community and have participants and basically members from all the industry, make it possible for people from outside Sudan to get connect and find information easier, or to connect with the right person to get the information. We've been invited to participate in some of the national initiatives, like the IPv6 task force, which put the plan for migration to IPv6. And we've been asked to basically train the engineers in the Internet Exchange Point. So we helped in the transformation of Sudan Internet Exchange Point from the routing model to switching model, through bringing experts, doing some engagement, organizing workshops, training the engineers on what is the difference and what is the benefit that could be. And even we felt that there was a domino effect for that knowledge. So experts that we bring each year during our events, whether they come sponsored by their organization or on their individual capacity, they came and trained in the most advanced topics. And then some of our trainees went out to be trainers themselves for the community. So we've seen it's like a bubble effect. So it's just increasing and growing. Although it wasn't like an easy journey, if we go to the next slide, we can see that some of the challenges that we were facing were related to the Sudan situation. So the country situation, whether it's economy, political stability, or unemployment, it makes it difficult to sustain like a steady level of activity. So we have been through a lot of things in the recent years, and but we kind of managed to sustain that. Some of the time, this also affected people commitment. So we do like workshops, people will not be able to participate due to several things, or volunteers will not be able to carry their commitment. But we learn through the journey that it's all about communicating with the community and making the expectation very visible, and trying to basically distribute the work as small as possible, so that no one will feel it's like a burden on them. Although we had like an industry involvement, we seek to have more active involvement. So we feel that it's kind of, we had the industry supporting us during our event, but we need like more of let's say, not reactive reaction, but proactive involvement from them. So we're still working on that, and we think that the journey ahead is going, and we're trying to make the our events and our engagement more of distributed instead of being focusing like in specific area. But all in all, like the different kinds of like COVID, the political situation make it a little bit hard. But we think that it's going good so far. We've been like ambitious. So part of the things that you learn while you are doing the community is try to hone your expectations. So you will start like with you start with like you were trying to do things that should be done like in 3 or 5 years. You're trying to do it like in half a year or several months. So with the experience, you learn how to basically level the things and make it a progress, but in a steady manner. So all in all, we're very happy with the journey so far, and we are hearing a lot of the positive feedback, and we hope that we will able to continue the journey the way we want it. Thank you very much. If you go to the next slide, you could find like a list of our social media presence if you want to follow the page and the Twitter and Facebook. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this, Hiba. And I know you weren't following the chat, but when you do, you'll be happily surprised. People are really thanking you for the talk and the inspiration. And I do think it was a very good talk, and inspiration in the case there was very good. I picked up on a couple words, interestingly enough, similar to what I was hearing from APAM. You said words like having a say and having a voice. And you also mentioned something about like-minded people coming together and really becoming the go-to for government and initiatives. And I think that's the real power that people coming together really brings forward. You mentioned that, you know, due to political situations and stuff like this, a lot of people or organizations or others were writing off Sudan, but you as a community said, we want to do something for our country. And one of the nice things that I know, having participated in SDNOG, is you've actually attracted a large number of experts to fly into Sudan to support the effort that you were doing, because they liked what they were seeing you guys doing and they wanted to support that. Another thing I don't think you've given yourself enough credit for is you guys do good translation work, right? So you're not just helping your own local community. You want to talk about that a bit, Hiba?
Yeah, so this is the thing that it's a domino effect, as I said. So when we set like our wiki page, we're seeing like other NOGs coming, and they're saying, actually, we went through some of your materials and documentation, and you'll find that it's very helpful for us. And we get like a nice feedback like that, and also the translation. So a lot of the part of working our community that we want to have like documents in Arabic language and to make more people like inclusive. So we were approached by other basically organization because they saw that they can do that. So this is the thing, that it's you put yourself out together, and then the opportunity come for more progress and more development. So it was a nice initiative. So.
And last question before I go to the next speaker is, so the group that started this out, right? Can you tell me, like, in terms of ages, seniority in their positions, gender, can you elaborate a little bit about how this got started?
So the group started actually, when it started, it was like an idea that I think it's the first one to start with. It was Sarah Levine. She's my friend. And then she recruited me, and then we started recruiting other people. So people are always saying that when they come to SDNOG event, that there is a majority of women, inside the event, and they see like it's the gender imbalance is the reverse in Sudan. So all in all, yes, we have a lot of active people, young people. They were like maybe out of the university 3 or 4 years out of university. And then most of the people who are like, you'll see active, are women. So I cannot say what is happening, but it's happening anyway.
That's great, Hiba, and I really appreciate that. And I think we have some more time for Q&A after this. So thank you for the comments, and go please enjoy the comments that people left for you there. But sticking with the theme of NOGs and sticking with the theme of people coming together and communities being built, the next speaker, Stephen, will be talking to us about some of the initiatives that we're seeing on another continent, the Caribbean NOG, and what's actually happening there. So Caribbean NOG, please, Stephen, go ahead.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Hisham, and thanks to the ISOC team. Special shout out to Shranon Sepa, who is the ISOC Director of Caribbean Affairs, and he's a Caribbean himself, and he kind of got us connected and involved in this. I want to talk a little bit about Caribbean, which kind of probably bridges what Anupam and Hiba spoke about in terms of both the community and building out the network. The Caribbean region, or where Caribbean operates, we're in that basin between North America, South America, with the Atlantic to our east, and it's about 16 sovereign nations and 24 dependencies, 43 million people or so on, mostly English-speaking, Spanish, French, and Dutch. But what's common to all of us is that we're mostly surrounded by ocean. So most of our interconnectivity inside of this region has to be via submarine cable. Thanks. And what we have inside of this this context is that movement around the economies are small. So we have a lot of economies with tens and hundreds of thousands of persons. And so we have small domestic economies. Travel tends to be expensive. Telecommunication tends to be expensive. And one of the challenges that we've had inside of the Caribbean region is actually building up economic progress and bridging some of the digital divides in that kind of environment. We've had a history similar to many regions of the world. When the internet started to grow commercially in the mid-90s, there was deregulation and liberalization of telecom markets in the early 2000s. We had traditionally cable and wireless as a dominant provider, and we got 2 or 3 more providers who have been competing since then. But essentially, a lot of the Caribbean nations have monopolies or duopolies in terms of the telecom space. If we go to the next slide, we'll see that what that has produced over time is that amongst these 40 countries or so, we have 10 countries with internet exchange points, a total of 12 active right now. And in fact, the de facto place that most of our traffic goes for exchange inside of the region is Miami. That's sometimes considered the de facto exchange point for the region is Napa of the Americas in Miami. If we go to the next slide, we can look at another version of the same thing, which is the global cloud infrastructure environment, in which there are no, and unsurprisingly with a market this small, there are no global cloud operators who have infrastructure in the region. And we're talking about AWS, Microsoft with Azure, the IBM clouds, and so on. We don't have anybody with infrastructure rooted in the region, but we do have at least one. There's one definitely, and depending on how you categorize them, maybe 2 cloud operators in which who are from the region, who have points of presence throughout the region and offer virtualization and cloud services. The overall effect of this is that in the Caribbean, we tend to consume a lot of technology and don't produce as much. And this became, I guess, a growing concern. If we go to the next slide, in around 2007, 2008, the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, who has a real a mandate to develop that telecommunications industry and IT and ICT services infrastructure in the region, had a real concern about the net export of our capital and not enough development and content being developed internally within the region that keeps a lot of the development in the region. And so with the support of the American Registry for Internet Numbers, ARIN, and the Packet Clearinghouse, they helped to establish CARIBNOG in 2007 to basically deal with the issue of empowering the region's IT, ICT professionals, people involved inside of the industry who, with all of the consumption of all of the global providers, the Facebooks, the YouTubes, AWS services, and so on, which we know is good, but at the same time, we want these people's creative capacity also turned towards developing transactions and commerce inside of the region. It's really part of just creating more economic opportunities inside of the region. And so CARIBNOG started with really great support from these organizations, as well as organizations like ISOC and ICANN, the Latin American Registry, LACNIC. These organizations have throughout that whole period of time until now helped to build the CARIBNOG and help the mission. And that mission really is to just foster technical communities. If we go to the next slide, you'll see we have, well, pre-COVID, we would have two regional meetings a year, and we're bringing together students, ICT professionals, people from government, network operators, just anybody who is involved in that area of network capacity building. And inside of these meetings, we're delivering training. In the initial meetings, we'll be talking about IPv6 and VoIP. These will be back in the earlier days. If we go to the next slide, in later years, we'll be moving into cloud infrastructure and peering and internet exchange points. And the meetings would move around the Caribbean region to give different persons, different countries an opportunity to host and to basically build up that community. So 2 meetings a year for the past since 2007, and we've basically built up a community of collaborative engineers and ICT professionals throughout the entire Caribbean region. If we go to the next slide and look at our IXP involvement with IXPs, in the early days, 2011, 2012, we'd be getting a lot of help from Packet Clearinghouse and ARIN and organizations like that. And we'd start with these, the small emplacements. Our story is very, very similar to Anupam in terms of, small switches, a few people connecting. Sometimes, we'd go through great pains just to get the major telecom operators to participate. We heard all of the same excuses around whether or not it makes sense, and they were doing private peering and so on. But over time, the message got out there, and that message got out there with a lot of support from our IORGs, from interventions like organizations like ISOC and ICANN, and over time it became the norm, and we have pretty much an acceptance that the region needs IXPs. This IXP that we're looking at in particular, Grenada, in 2012, we had 1 rack. By 2019, that had grown into a small micro data center in which the government was peering. We had global caches present there. They had set up an operation in which local businesses, even those without any servers to rack and so on, could actually get space on the servers which were donated, and they can exchange a lot of traffic. And now it's pushing gigs of traffic through domestically. And it's actually one of the great success stories in the Caribbean region, how the IXP in Grenada has grown. We see similar development in Belize and a number of the countries. So next slide. Just to talk very briefly about during COVID, and we had to move everything online. CARIBNOG basically moved to virtual meetings and focused on issues which kind of sprang even more into life. The demand that working remotely has put on a network. That is something which has accelerated the push towards internet exchange points, because our schools need to continue. in this virtual structure. People have left their places of business and basically pushed either the work that they're doing into the cloud or moved servers to small micro data centers and are operating remotely. And so the challenge Caribnog took up over the last year plus has been to help the community to make that transition and to kind of consider what is the new normal in terms of the network infrastructure and ICT operations in the Caribbean region inside of this mostly virtualized environment. And it's really highlighted the need for us to have the exchange points for resilience, for autonomy. The dependence on hauling traffic to Miami and back is really counter to what we're seeing now in terms of when local communities need to be able to run meetings locally or exchange the data and have calls and do sessions and so on at low cost in the local environment. So next slide, just looking at where Caribnog is going. Basically, the high priority emphases for us right now are to continue to push out internet exchange points. There's a specific focus this year in partnership with Aaron to bring a number of the exchange points which are close but not quite over the line, get them fully activated, help to basically take them to the next level in which and this is something that we've discovered at many IXPs globally, that getting connected is like just the ground floor. But what's needed is to build on top of that and start to create transactions and local content and services which run on top of the IXPs. And that is the starting point of the economic development and more opportunities that we want to see inside of the region. And we don't believe that any we've encountered the arguments that at certain scales it doesn't make sense and you need large scale to do this. But I mean, the fact is that these communities of 10,000 and 50,000 people inside of an island are transacting anyway. They are going to the markets, they are doing business, farmers are selling, they're exchanging, doing transactions locally. And so there's a place for that to be supported by digital infrastructure that doesn't cost that community a net expense to have those transactions being run on remote hardware. And we do accept that cloud at scale with AWS and so on is absolutely a necessity. We can't operate at that scale at that low cost, but we're balancing that alongside at the lowest rungs of our societies in which there isn't that foreign exchange access and there isn't the access to high technologies for us inside of the region to build solutions by people who understand the local context for people inside of that local context. And that's what Caribnog at the core of it, that's what we're looking to do. So cybersecurity is another huge issue. As more people go online, the less digitally literate and less digitally savvy are going online. And so part of the goal is to empower everyone to understand how to conduct themselves and to stay safe online. And so we're moving more and more into providing those kind of that kind of help, targeting our network, targeting specific areas of interest of our network operators, and providing more data, really moving into capturing and measuring data so that it will help decision makers in the region to make the best calls based on what's available. So that's basically it. The last slide will just indicate similar to Hiba, these are the ways in which you can help to build and work alongside with us inside the Caribbean region. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks so much for this. I think it's been quite interesting. We're getting a lot of questions and a lot of comments. So the powers that be say we can actually stay a little bit longer in case anybody wants to stay on, because there's still a lot that we want to be addressing here. But to throw this back to you, Stephen, again, very quickly, there was a question here about the kind of funding and support you get. Is it just like cash? Do you get like in kind? Do they help with workshops? Can you elaborate a little bit more on how you got the support?
Sure. Actually, most the vast majority, especially in the last 10 plus years of our time in Caribbean, the vast majority of that the resourcing of it, let's call it that, has been volunteer based. So in terms of people who spend their own money to fly to a country to help make and do an installation, who will donate their own equipment and so on and so forth. We have from the institutions like ISOC and like ARIN and LATNIC and so on, definitely received that kind of help in kind, sometimes donated equipment, definitely areas like training, like facilitating workshops and meetings and so on. But I would say one thing we've discovered quite surprisingly, how far we can go and how much development can be had in many cases without a direct cash spend. Now we know that there has to be a cash spend at some point. You know, Cisco routers cost. So at some point we do have to buy hardware and so on. But Carbnog and what a lot of the groups like this try to do inside of our region is encourage as much as possible for persons to provide in-kind support to make things cost neutral. So for example, when we're rolling out an IXP, we would strongly encourage, let's not go for the top of the line 5 nines IXP to start out, in which there's a huge multi-tens of $1,000s spend just to get going. Everybody bring your MikroTik router, right? Bring your basic layer 2 switch. Let us collaborate on trying to get together at a location in a way that's cost neutral to everybody. And we've been able to make a lot of progress through that kind of model. And then it gets rounded out by international support.
Yeah, no, that's great. And working for an OIR myself, I'm happy to hear that others talking about the good examples that the OIRs have been setting of spending the community's money back into the community and initiatives like this, and making sure that the membership actually gets the best benefit that they can from these kind of community initiatives. I'm going to throw a question to all the speakers, but maybe also ISOC here. There were a couple of questions that we got. One was about the support, which I mentioned at the beginning, but there was also a question about people with living with disabilities and how including them into the community, other efforts that are being done there, what efforts can be done to actually include a little bit more there. So I'm opening it up for anybody with thoughts, whether from the panelists or from ISOC.
I think I can say something about that. I think as we've seen in Sudan, part of the problem in many of the issues is the policy part. So it's usually the make it or break it. Sometimes you have the resources, but because there was like not a focused policy or a specific policy, you will have issues in implementing whatever it is. So from my perspective, I think that having a community putting such issues in the top priority of their list and trying to influence the government and the industry to implement that could be very helpful if we take it from a community perspective. In addition to the small project that people can support. So some of the projects like in Sudan, some of the projects that people are doing, especially in the industry, is basically recording, trying to find some people who will help with during exams. This is in order to cover for the lack of the inclusivity in the current system. But from my perspective, I think it's all come to the policy, and this is where the community could have their voice to support such priorities in the national level.
Thank you for that, Hiba. Naveed, I saw you kind of unmuted yourself there. I think you wanted to say something.
Yes, quickly, Hisham. I just wanted to cover. In fact, I'll let Michuki to cover the IXP support because it's very detailed, and I have to hop for my iftar very soon. But I wanted to cover the accessibility angle, what Hiba was saying. I agree on the policy side. I think there's a lot that is needed to be done. And we as an organization have done a lot of efforts over the past few years. we have this accessibility special interest group as well. So I would like to invite people who are interested to be part of this force, which is trying to make change both on the technology and the policy side around the globe. And there is still a lot to be done. I mean, just take example of websites, folks, take some time to just do a research how many websites in your country are accessible, and you would be very disappointed. So there are so much to be done to embrace person of disabilities into this internet space. And I think together we need to join hands and do a lot. But thanks for giving this opportunity, Hisham.
Thank you, Naveed, and happy Iftar. And for all of you that are witnessing Ramadan, happy Iftar soon. Mitch, you wanted to talk about the exchange point bit?
Yes, thank you, Hisham, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are. So we, under the Infrastructure and Community Development Project, we do provide support and to communities with respect to development of the internet exchange point. So at the very beginning, depending on the level of development you're at, if it's a new IXP, we will help with the infrastructure development, the switches, the routers, servers that are needed to set up the IXP. But above and beyond that, we also help with the community mobilization. I think that's an important aspect from what we do. We've learned that that's 80% of the effort, and 20% goes to the technical. So we also do make an investment to support the community in coming together, be it previously we did that when we were doing in-person meetings with mobilization workshops, bringing the community experts to help in that conversation for you to get a broader understanding of what it takes to build the internet exchange point and bring people together, having that conversation. Now that we are in this space where we're not meeting in person, we're trying to do it remotely. It's not as great as meeting in person because there's a lot of other issues about that, with respect to meeting in person that helps break the ice and get over some of the challenges. But we're still trying to continue to do so. And then for existing internet exchange points, we help them in their growth path. So be it taking the opportunity to help them upgrade their infrastructure from what was the initial simple basic switches, as Anupam mentioned, will help them grow based on their growth path. And it doesn't stop there. I want to say it doesn't stop there. Currently, we are working on a new training course. Hisham knows about it. We are calling it IXP 2.0, and it's really aimed at trying to help IXPs understand what it takes for them to go from that initial startup phase to a thriving, a successful internet exchange point. So we are pretty much in a phase where the materials are in an advanced stage, and hopefully later this year from August onwards, the course will be available online. And when things open up, it's something that we'll also be able to help do on a face-to-face basis. So the support is there. I want to also mention that it's not unique to ISOC that what we do. We have other partners we collaborate with. Think special shout out to PCH. We collaborate really well with them. And as Steve mentioned, the support they've done in the Caribbean region and other parts, including Africa and Asia. So we collaborate with them to make sure that we give the communities all the support that they need. And of course, the RILs, I would be remiss not to mention them, because without them, we'll really not be able to do so much. So we don't go to any place alone. And that's one thing I would like to mention. It's not that we step in alone. We'll bring or drag anyone that we know who will be able to make a contribution to what we're doing. And that's the way we work. When we talk about community, it's not that ISOC goes and does something alone. No, as Evelyn started this very well, that if we want to go further, go together. And so we will try and bring everyone we know to the process, both local and international. And that's sort of the way we see things being more successful, being more sustainable as well. And so it's something that we will try to continue supporting. And in case you have any questions on how else we could support you, and I think I've not also mentioned the NOG support that we provide. For the NOGs, that also scales from the online trainings. We've really ramped up our e-learning training, online training with the support of a training and e-learning team. So look out for the announcements that will be coming out. We just had a cohort starting this April, and others coming up in the next cycles for the revamped NetOps courses. And other online courses that we're offering. And we really want to increase the offering that we have for online training, because we don't know how much longer we're going to be in this situation where the face-to-face meetings are not going to be taking place. So we certainly want to give that opportunity for the engagement to continue. But also, if you're a startup NOG, I think the lessons that we've taken from Hiba in terms of trying to, and Steve as well, that bring the community, but also reach out to, ISOC and other partners to see what else we can bring in terms of the international experts for us to be able to help create that domino effect. Feel free to reach out to us and let us know what we can do to help you develop the technical community locally through the NOG, whether it's the NREN and so on and so forth. So we are very keen to work with you on all those areas. So I think I've spoken quite a bit, Hisham, so sending this back to you, but we've shared the contacts online on the chat room, rather, the email address from the project, infracomdev@isoc.org, and the page for the project, so you can get more information, but write to us and we'll be happy to get back to you with a response to your question.
Perfect. I have one last question for Stephen in the chat here. I think it's an interesting one, and then I'll hand it over to Evelyn to wrap us up. The question is more about the role. It talks about the good programs that you're doing in the Caribbean, but it's saying that the issue there in that part of the world is mostly on the spectrum allocation, and that the non-governmental bodies do not really have a say. Do you think, like what Thibaut was saying, at one point you guys could be a go-to that government comes and consults? Do you see you playing a role there? And if so, how do you see that developing?
Yeah, I actually, interested. I saw that as well. Was going to reply. The spectrum issues in the Caribbean are largely handled by and through, or let's say with from the technical side, with the great support of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union (CTU), which is very, very close, works very, very closely with CARIBNOG. So just in terms of, and they've been a key part of trying to dealing with harmonization of policies and spectrum allocations and dealing with that whole area. So I'd actually say that that the ideal case to us is to basically continue to support the work that CTU is doing to try to get that to a good position for the region generally, just in terms of who is able to be a part of the conversation, how decisions are made, and so on. The CTU themselves are playing a really great role there.
Perfect. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time here. Thank you for those that stayed a little bit longer. But as you can see, questions are still pouring in, comments are still pouring in. I think this is a hint to the ISOC people that you're actually doing something right here, and maybe you need to do more of it. Yeah, I'll throw this back to Evelyn to let us know next steps. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone. We're really happy that you stayed on longer than the 1 hour. And yes, we received a lot of questions from this session. We'll make sure to follow up and answer the questions, and we'll send you a link for all the questions that have not been answered today. So thank you so much for staying on. And now, if you want to learn more about IXPs, we have a site there. You can please go to that website and learn more about IXPs. And then we also ask you to make a difference in your community. If you have any questions, please email infracomdev@isoc.org. And then we also wanted to shout out, so we have a couple of IXP events coming up, one being tomorrow, the Central Africa Peering Forum. Be sure to check out our events page to get the details. We also have the Virtual Peering Africa series on the 4th of May. as well as the virtual peering sessions, series for Central Asia, that will be happening on the 11th of May. So check out the internetsociety.org/events page for all of these. Thank you so much again for joining. Thanks for being patient with us today, and we will get back to you very soon. Bye, everyone.